Have you ever had that feeling that you're somehow missing something? That the reality you perceive every day is just a sliver of what's actually out there? Well, today, we're going to explore an idea from the book Total Perception, an idea about the powerful, invisible barriers that filter our reality and, well, prevent us from seeing the world as it really is. And this quote, it really gets to the very heart of our entire exploration today. What it suggests is that our perception isn't some passive window to the world. No, it's actually an active process. It's limited, and it's shaped by the very tool we use to understand everything, our own mind. You see, what we perceive is not necessarily what is, but what our mind allows us to conceive of. So, here's the path we'll take. First, we'll start by challenging how reliable our senses really are. Then, we're going to unpack three huge barriers: our concept of time, the idea of the self, and even knowledge itself. And finally, we'll look at what a path toward a more unfiltered awareness might look like. Okay, so let's dive right in with a pretty fundamental question. How much can we really trust what we see, what we hear, and what we smell? We tend to think of ourselves as the pinnacle of evolution, but when it comes to just raw sensory input, we might be in for a little bit of a surprise. This really puts our own abilities into perspective, doesn't it? A dog can hear frequencies almost double our range. A bat can navigate in total darkness using just sound. And as for our sense of smell, well, most other species leave us completely in the dust. The book points out that we're so limited. Our stomachs often have to be the ones to tell us food has gone bad because our noses and tongues completely missed it. This isn't just about animals being better. It's about recognizing that our basic sensory input is, from the start, inherently limited. So our senses are limited, for sure, but the real filtering, the heavy lifting, happens in the brain. To see this in action, I want you to just take a look at this next image and notice what your mind does, almost instantly. Now, this illustrates the point perfectly. Did you see a collection of hundreds of individual gray dots, or did your brain immediately jump to the number 16? See, your brain is a pattern-finding machine. It takes in this massive amount of sensory data, it ignores what it considers background noise, in this case, all the individual dots, and it pulls out a familiar, meaningful symbol. It's an incredibly efficient tool for survival, but it comes at a cost. We miss the raw reality for the sake of a convenient, quick interpretation. And this is the crucial takeaway from this first part. Our perception isn't a clear window looking out onto reality. It's actually much more like a mirror reflecting our own habits, our past experiences, and our brain's nonstop search for simple, manageable patterns. All right, let's move on to our first major barrier. It's something so fundamental to our lives, we almost never question it: time. Our entire lives are structured by the clock, but this constant focus on the past and the future, it can trap us. It can prevent us from ever truly experiencing the present. I mean, think about it. When you're in school, you can't wait for college. When you're in college, you're rushing to get that first job. At work, you're racing for the next promotion. The source material describes our lives as this constant race to the next station. But here's the thing. When we finally arrive, we don't stop to enjoy it. We're already looking down the track, fixated on the next one. We live in this state of perpetual anticipation and impatience. This quote from the book is such a perfect and honestly a painful example. Steve finally gets the promotion he's been working so hard for, but he can't even enjoy the moment. And why? Because his mind is completely trapped in the past. It's anchored to an old expectation of when this should have happened. The memory of what was supposed to be completely poisons the reality of what actually is. And here's the profound conclusion of all this. When we try to perceive the present moment, but we do it through the filter of our memories, our expectations, this whole framework of time, we can't really experience anything new. We're just projecting the past onto the present again and again and again. So if time distorts our perception of moments, our next barrier distorts our perception of relationships. And this is what's called the illusion of separation, that mental wall we build between me and mine and, well, the rest of the world. This example is one that's so relatable, it's almost funny. Picture it, you're at a school recital. Do you see the beautiful, coordinated performance of the entire group of children? Probably not. Your eyes are locked on your kid, tracking their every single move. The concept of mine acts like a spotlight, narrowing your perception so dramatically that you miss the bigger picture completely. This illusion of mine leads to some very predictable psychological biases. One is the endowment bias. For example, a simple coffee mug that you got for free, well, it suddenly seems much more valuable once it becomes your coffee mug. We assign more worth to things simply because we possess them. And that's closely followed by loss aversion. As the book notes, the pain you'd feel from losing a $10 bill is far greater than the pleasure you'd feel from finding one. Our perception of value is completely skewed by this fear of losing what we consider ours. And finally, there's the self-serving bias. If I succeed, it's because I'm brilliant. I worked hard. If I fail, well, the circumstances were against me. The timing was off. This me versus the world kind of thinking prevents us from ever seeing our own actions and their outcomes clearly and objectively. Now we come to what might be the most counterintuitive barrier of them all, our own knowledge. We spend our lives accumulating information, believing it helps us understand the world. But what if that very same knowledge is actually a trap, one that prevents us from ever seeing reality with fresh eyes? This famous quote just captures the problem perfectly. Our mind's primary function is to categorize things based on what it already knows. So when we face a new experience, the mind doesn't really see it for what it is. Instead, it just searches its toolbox for the closest nail it can hit with its hammer of existing knowledge. At the end of the day, this dependence on knowledge locks us in a loop. We're not truly experiencing the world. We're just confirming what we already think we know. By endlessly projecting our past onto the present moment, nothing can ever feel genuinely new. So we've identified these massive barriers, our deluded senses, the prison of time, the bias of the self, and the trap of knowledge. And frankly, it sounds pretty bleak. But the book doesn't just diagnose the problem. It also points toward a solution, a path toward what it calls total perception. Now, this path isn't easy, but the steps are clear. First, we must try to observe without the constant filter of our past memory. Second, we have to let go of our deep-seated need for security, to drop the fear of the new and the uncertain. Third, we need to dissolve that hard line between me and not me that causes so much bias. And finally, and maybe most importantly, we have to adopt an I do not know approach, to be willing to look at the world without the arrogance of our accumulated knowledge. And so that leaves us with this final, powerful question to reflect on. If you could set it all aside, your memories, your biases, your knowledge, your very idea of time and self, just for a moment, what would you see? What would you experience if you saw the world not through the filter of your past, but as it truly is right now?